welcome tonight. And I'm even surprised with all those competition we have tonight. 6 talks.
Competing events.
Lots of competing events.
Lots of competing events.
6 talks. This is session opening.
It's a session opening.
Also, however, welcome. And this is even makes us feel even more comfortable. So, I would like to start with Zin Taylor and me. We met a couple of years ago in Brussels, when I lived in Brussels. And probably I should start with a little anecdote from this time. Huh? When did you move to Brussels? When was it exactly?
It was the fall of 2008, end of August 2008.
I was living there already since a couple of years, and we met through very, very close friends who will be having a show here next year. No?
Yeah.
So,
Harald and Jos.
Harald and Jos, exactly. Yeah, however, you showed me a film I didn't like.
Yeah, it's true. I had a show at Établissement d'en Face Project, which is an art center in Brussels. It's been around for about 23, 24 years. And at the time, Dieter Rolstraat, a curator at the MUCA, him and I had begun working together and talking and understanding one another. And he had programmed a video I had done called Put Your Eye in Your Mouth, a conversational documentary recording Martin Kippenberger's Metronet station in Dawson City, Yukon. And I had known about Nicolaus for quite a while, and I was interested in speaking with him because of what you have done with publishing, with curation, with dialogue. And I remember emailing you saying, I'm in the city, want to hang out. It was one of those like really nervous things where I think I was like 28, and I was living in Canada, and I was in Belgium. And I was like, you know what, like the worst thing that can happen is he says no. But I decided to sort of, reach out, and I think it was like a Sunday afternoon or something, and I showed you this video, and you didn't like it.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't like the video.
Yeah.
But I liked the approach, and I liked and I was already then, I thought, this guy is extremely obsessive with something what you can't understand at the first place. Yeah? And it's not very often that I tell to someone, to an artist, that I don't like a specific artwork, a specific film or video. But I thought, okay, he's strong enough, then we can get, from there on, we started a conversation. Yeah. And it's a while back, so it ended up, also when I went to Canada, when I started to work in Canada a couple of years ago, and I invited you for this residency.
Yeah, the Fogo
Island residency. Yeah. And we just recently, a couple of months ago, published, it's 2 months ago, no?
Yeah, it's 2 months.
2 months ago, we published this wonderful pink book, which is not part of this exhibition, but it has something to do with it. And I want to quote a little bit from the introduction from Rosemary, Heather, and myself. Although Taylor could only be characterized as a kind of surface ethnographer, and in the beginning we were really thinking, can we tell you a hobby?
I would have objected to that, I think.
Do you think you can control every word, what is written?
Sometimes you can. In books? Yeah.
Yeah, in this book, yes. No, I know.
But it's true, you're right.
But it's this surface ethnographer, which, the word, which I couldn't, for this it needs a native English speaker. And Rosemary came up with that, I think, wonderful idea. It's not too far-fetched to say that he sought to satisfy an ethnographic-like curiosity in the works he made on Fogo Island. In Lichen, and this are Lichen, his show on Fogo Island is called Lichen, Voices, Stripes, and Dots. And it's not necessarily something to do only with Fogo Island. It has something to do with your obsessions. Yeah, I think so. And I go on in quoting, not myself. It's a wonderful text in that book by the British curator Zoe Gray. Taylor sees language as a visual form. The horizontal is the narrative, he explains, punctuated by the vertical, the gesture. For him, the vertical gesture is the proposition, the poetic moment. The stripe, therefore, is the narrative, while the dot is the gesture. Starting with the stripes, you know, you are usually working a lot with stripes.
Yeah, well, I think the stripes and dots, it's a series of, I guess, exhibitions almost. That exist as chapters, right? So there's chapter 1, that was at the Muka in Antwerp a couple of years ago, and chapter 5 is Fogo Island, and chapter 6 opens in 2 weeks at the Southern Alberta Art Gallery in Canada. And I guess that approach to sort of the story of Stripes and Dots and how it came about was wanting to work on something that would evolve and grow. And as there was growth and as there was change, you could exhibit this. You could exhibit these gestures. This idea of sort of the striping or the patterning of something was a way of locating an idea onto a surface, right? And it started with these photographs that I had taken. And I wanted to find a way to, I guess, visually map something that you couldn't predict, like a human body. A human body or a human mind can do many, many, many things, and it's not a sort of a strategic, readable device necessarily. But you can provide a kind of skin or a surface, or you can provide a kind of moment where what that body does can be read along the lines of language. So my friend's arm, I put black and white stripes on it, and every time she kind of threw her arm around, a photograph was taken, capturing this gesture, which this gesture then composed, because it's painted black and white, it composed a kind of geometric abstraction of horizontals and verticals and diagonals, and which was a way of showing a unit, like an arm or a limb, its ability to construct a kind of visual language. And then from there it became, well, if a stripe, you know, and this is sort of my own designation, right? This is just my own rules, which I then set out to visually communicate, was that horizontals are narrative and verticals are gesture. And you always begin a narrative with a gesture by beginning, and you always end that narrative by ending, which is also a gesture. So it was this thing like this to this could be used to communicate. And then that sort of went one step further, where a stripe seen from head on could be a dot, or a dot seen from the side could be a stripe, which then introduced this way of looking at information from various points of view, and then how that information can then expand and grow into statements or gestures or exhibitions or ideas or concepts or whatnot. So when we talk about this kind of this surface ethnographer, this overdeveloped interest in things that I have, which is right here with the Lichen Wall as well. I guess it's a way of investing in a subject to the point where it can start talking about something else. And when I showed you the Kippenberger video, it was very much about that. I'd made this documentary about this work that Kippenberger had done in the north of Canada. But the documentary was more about the existence of a form of language within an environment, and that a brothel or a saloon or a hotel was made from the same material as Kippenberger's Metronet. And the fact being that the Metronet was actually just an idea, just like a brothel is an idea or a bar is an idea, and how that idea took on form using the material of the environment.
Yeah, and this is also, it's nice that you say that, because now I like the film very much. Sometimes really the future explains and what has happened.
Patience is good.
No, it's not patience. You understand. Sometimes it's your patience. No, but sometimes you understand. it's also, if you only see the video or only if you see an individual piece, it's sometimes very hard to understand.
Yeah.
You know, that is quite challenging also for us here in, you know, curating and doing group exhibitions. Sometimes you only see only one piece. But what is your addiction with black and white? This is one of the very few colored.
Well, I guess black and white just, I mean, it was a way of reducing. Because like you say, there is a complexity to some of the ideas that I have that get lost on a lot of people or get lost within exhibitions at times. And I mean, I see every show or every work, every project as this sort of slow evolution, right? And it's all kind of moving towards this end thing, maybe 20 or 30 or 40 years. I guess I grew up as looking at art as an art historical thing, because I'm from the middle of nowhere, Canada, where we don't have this immediate sort of art world around us. So you have an idea of an artist's work is actually spread along a long period of time. And I guess I kind of take that to heart. So when I started working and developing things, you know, I mean, I kind of go idea to idea. And where the black and white came in was, it was a way of simplifying things. It was making it very, very sort of clear in that Hemingway kind of reduction.
As you're not colorblind.
I'm not colorblind. I don't think so. Yeah. I guess I'll never know. But you know, like, yeah. Yeah, and I guess it was a way of being very, very harsh in a way. But also working with something like familiarity. I mean, you know what black and white is. You know what a stripe and a dot is. So using very familiar terms in order to talk about what could be a very complex proposition. But if you work with familiarity, it's like you're already halfway there, right? You sort of understand the analogs, the A and the B of something, or the yes or no, or that this could also be that. And it's a way of just using that through that one series. But then we have something like this, which blows out completely from the same place, right? But where it really is about this kind of buildup of color and this proposition of a surface coming from something. So.
But how did it come from the same place? Because I don't understand. It's a completely...
Oh no, it's completely different in a way, but it's also completely related. Because
ethnography is the right term to describe your...
I guess in a way, yeah. Well, I mean, ethnography is sort of like looking at something, right? And you look at something and you study it and then you think about it. And when I was on Fogo Island specifically, or I mean, this could be anywhere. It was here as well. I was looking for something that naturally existed that could talk about thinking. It could be a stand-in for thinking. And then when I sort of, was walking around on Fogo, there's lichen on all the rocks. It just sort of grows everywhere. And so you start researching lichen, and all you do is you Google it, right? And you wind up with it. It's this prehistoric organism that exists on the surface of rocks or buildings, like the church in downtown Vienna, for example, that I saw when I was toured around the city in June by Vivian. And that this organism can survive extreme temperatures, but it's also it reflects what goes on around it. So if the air is heavily polluted, it will change the color of lichen. And so put within a kind of discursive idea, the lichen becomes a thinking surface that records what happens in front of it and can possibly influence you as well. And lichen was used for the production of pigments for paints, for perfumes. And it has a history of use, and it has a history related to its color and the various colors that come out of it, because they change all the time. And when this thing of sort of the Salon of Angst, this thing of like working with angst or trying to provide something that's thinking in a way that can potentially have a sort of psychological buildup.
He's one of the very few artists who got an assignment here for that exhibition. Salon der Angst, we were I knew that you will come up with a very good idea, but we didn't know, it was a half a year before the opening of that show, what it will be. So we discussed Salon der Angst quite often. What will it be, and etc. What should it be? How should it look? And and how should it be presented? And what could be? How can conflicting artworks be presented together? You know, not necessarily everything what you see here in that room, and especially on that wall, fits together. Yeah, or comes from the same context. As a Picabia and Florian Mitroy and Tobias Ziloni there, it's, you know, on the surfaces it has nothing to do with each other. Okay, and then we thought, okay, it might be interesting if we create a salon atmosphere. And to me, salon has always to do something with fear, with angst, with anxiety. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and angst for me, and this is what I didn't realize, is that German angst is very different than, say, North American angst.
Now, it's not really true. You know what German angst means? Is exactly the North American. Okay, then explain your North American view. But German angst is a term from the 1980s.
Okay.
Which got, okay, what is angst for you?
Well, I mean, angst for me was like, you know, Bob Dylan being 17 years old, born to the wrong family, and leaving and going to New York and writing songs and finding a new community. Like, angst is what produces, like, punk rock. Yeah. Angst is what produces these changes and these movements, and typically in youth culture, right?
But this is not a German angst.
No, I didn't know that. No. So when I got here, like, no, angst is more fear. And I'm not, I mean, I have my fears. We all do. But I don't use fear as material. And there's a long history of artists using a kind of psychological fear or, you know, documenting various problems that they have, and that's somehow interesting.
Mini psychologists.
Yeah, you know, and then there's some pretty good examples of it in the show. But it's not something I do, right? I mean, I guess I reject negativity. I'm this sort of endlessly positive person, and I always try, and the works are trying to be positive, and they're trying to be generative, and I use a lot of humor and absurdity as a way of communicating.
Art does not has to work or reflect. Look at Hirschhorn there.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I totally appreciate the Hirschhorn, and I mean, Peter Weckler's video too. Like, you know, and I used to live with Peter. I mean, this is hilarious. This is how he is. We shared an apartment together. Of course, it's a
self-portrait.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I mean, there's no way I could ever do that. I guess I just don't think I'm that interesting. But I think Lichen is interesting, and I think the way that Lichen or...
But you are really the opposite characters, I have to say. Peter Weckler and you, but he's not... And, I'm surprised I'm forgetting about that you used to live together. Yeah. But that is... then I have to go back to your biography, where you're coming from. Indeed, growing up in a rural area in remote Canada, Alberta. Alberta is the Texas of Canada, as a very rich province. Yeah. And I have been there as well many years ago, and then later once again to Banff. But how is that, growing up in an environment with almost no museum? And I'm not only talking about
there is no museum.
There is no museum, yeah.
There's a very little art community that's it's very strong. The art school that I went to, the Alberta College of Art and Design, is incredible. I think the faculty was a mix of...
but before, how did you get involved in... Just accidentally? It was a time before internet.
Yeah.
When you were 18.
I guess you just, you start up having these ideas, and I don't know. You get a little book on Picasso when you're 10 or something, and you're like, well, maybe this is an idea.
Or you just wanted to get out of there?
And part of it was getting out, sure. But, I mean, I grew up skateboarding. I grew up skateboarding, going to punk shows and music shows and doing this, and I was involved in the music world there, and my friends were in bands, and there was a culture around skateboarding that at a certain time in the early 90s when I was really involved in it. I mean, I was like 12, 13 years old, and that's what I did. where people were doing their own thing. They were starting their own companies, they were doing their own magazines, they're doing zines, like photocopy stuff, and that's what I like. That was the music I was listening to, is the culture I was in. And it was a culture of doing shit. Is that if you didn't like what was going on, then you did something to change it. And you didn't complain, you came up with something different. And I guess I've carried that through into what I do now, and I see art as this really great place where you can do things. So growing up in Alberta, I mean, you knew like nothing, like you knew no one was looking at you. Especially when you went to art school, you know, like as soon as you get in there, you see art form for the first time you're 18, you're like, oh, they're never going to come to Calgary. It's just really clear, right? Like there's nothing around you, but in that absence, in that kind of void, it gives you this opportunity, this great opportunity to start constructing and to start thinking. And that's something, there's a couple artists from Alberta that I know still, who are still practicing. And we talk about this, is that there's this space that's afforded mentally for you to just make stuff up in a way.
I'm also asking this, and I'm interested in knowing more about artists' biographies, not how they started to study art or how they got involved in the art market or in the system. Does your biography still matter? And you know, now in the time when we are all saying, okay, everything gets the same, where the world gets globalized, the access to images is the same, etc. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think everyone grows up different.
No, not only different, but also that the departure. Why being an artist, or why working in that field? It's a completely different one, and it matters for the actual production later on, I'm pretty sure.
I think so. I mean, it's dialogue, and I mean, and actually, I can pinpoint it exactly. There was a skateboard magazine in San Francisco called Slap Magazine that just started, and I'd seen issue 1, you could buy it at the local skateboard shop called Skaters in Calgary. There were 3 of them, Freewheeling, the snowboard shop, and Skaters. And you can get it for $1.50. And I got it, and then issue 2 came out, and it was like $3 because it went up. It was just photocopied. And I remember my mother's an accountant, and she had a home office, and she had a fax machine. And I wrote them a fax, because I don't know, I wanted to get in touch with them quickly. I really don't know why. And I asked if I could subscribe, and they had just started, and they faxed me back like a week later. This huge thing just shows up with all these drawings and this thing, this handwritten thing. And they're like, Zin, hey, how's it going? Yeah, no, we don't have subscriptions yet, but would you mind writing an article on the skateboard scene in Calgary? Like, I was 12 years old. And, you know, and I had one friend, my friend Andrew Sawatsky, who's a skateboarder. And I remember, like, we got this, like, this is incredible. Like, and we started planning this article that we never wound up writing, you know. But we started listing off all these things that we could write about and we could do. And it was, I guess it was this one really simple thing. Like, you send something out and you get something back. And someone from, you know, San Francisco, which at that point was this real sort of mecca for skateboarding and skate culture, and part of that scene of DIY production as well, and that someone there would be interested in something that I had to say. And I think that's when I kind of clued in that you could do something. Like, if you had a good idea, and if you wanted to do it, you could do it. And I think later on I just found that in a sort of creative thing, and wanting to be creative and wanting to make things and think about things, is that art just slowly became this context where I could do it with him, you know? I mean, I thought of being a graphic designer, but I can't sit in an office. I'm really bad at that. I had one office job for 3 months, and it really did not go well.
I'm asking that also to go on again with Zoe Gray, and then to the other text which was recently written about you. Zoe Gray continues Taylor's precondition for the making of an artwork is first he establishes a system, and then within such a conceptual matrix he roams freely. This you were talking about now. Yeah? It's a process that allows the artist to make ideas sculptural, which is essential to his practice. Zoe Gray. Salon wording that's a very strange name, by the way, you know? Salon, yeah, Salon Twerdy, also writing this book, puts it another way, and I think even more beautiful. For Taylor, form is equally a property of matter and ideas, such that clear distinction between the two becomes difficult to maintain. Twerdy's characterization of Taylor's work doubles as a fair description of artworks in general. Extra visible propositions about what, this I find so extremely important, as extra visible propositions about what mind, body, sentience look like in the world. And I like that you were talking about skateboarding. What is there? Isn't art a little bit the opposite of the body and the mind? You know, when this isn't it dead? You know, you're not the only skateboarder or former skateboarder or a skateboarder fan I know who became an artist. Yeah, but that is body and mind.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm a little hippie too, right? There's this way of sort of mixing the rightness of a structure, that kind of analytical proposition, which the art world really loves. And then there's that hallucinogenic wrongness of psychedelia, which is sort of the abstraction, or what I sort of relate to abstraction. And it's the mixing of the two. So you have this idea of the mind and the body. You know, bodies do things, minds think things. They are responsible for what happens. I mean, artworks don't change the world, people do. You know, I mean, something could give you an idea, but you physically actually have to go out and do that, right? You can't really blame it on something else. You are a thinking body. You have an option to say yes or no. You have the option to think more freely or more advanced, or to think wrong. And I guess I try and locate that within these structures. So these structures I set up, or I find, and part of that's the ethnographer, part of that's growing up in the middle of nowhere and always looking at things and analyzing them. But finding a system in which to inhabit, where as soon as it's set up, you can kind of start playing around, right? So, I mean, if we're going to talk about the Lichen Wall, it was this relationship to the 60s that you could maybe put in psychology, but also just this idea of a pattern or a surface, something really boring just as a surface. Like, this could just have been a white wall, right? But now this is sort of put onto that white wall, and now it has a different kind of opportunity, and it talks to different things.
Do lichens have a system?
They might.
Yeah?
They probably do. I mean, yeah, well, I mean, I guess I relate it to, they're built like a sandwich, right? So it's like a ham and cheese sandwich. That's how a lichen is built. There's 4 different layers to it. The first layer and the last layer are identical, and in between that's the ham and the cheese, or the peanut butter and jelly. And this thing works together to then, you're laughing. It's supposed to be funny, it's okay. It's a way of understanding some sort of weird scientific, biological thing. I'm not a biologist or a scientist, but there's a way of understanding this, right? So, I mean, but even within that, I mean, so within each lichen, or like each sort of lichen flower, right? Within that, there's these 2 things inside which are always talking, and how they talk and how they consume and reflect changes their color, changes their form, changes their surface, which could also be a way of talking, to then introduce something like black and white, or a stripe and a dot.
But do you have a system, or can you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no. I mean, I have various tricks, and everyone. I mean, I have various influences and things that I use to think with.
Are you not afraid to become a one-trick pony one time?
No, I don't know. Maybe. Well, we're all afraid of that. But I always change. I always thought the value of an art work or an exhibition is that you should be surprised. Right, that you shouldn't know what's coming next. And I think for me, there's a structure to how I work.
Getting out of the systems, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the proposition of an additional one, or it's the proposition of something new. I think an artwork is a proposition, and an exhibition is a gesture. And every time you should offer something.
That's interesting. This is a contradiction for me as well. Yeah. An artwork is an artwork, an exhibition is an exhibition.
Yeah.
Can you explore on this?
Oh, like with propositions and gestures?
No, contradiction.
Contradiction.
Contradiction between an exhibition and an artwork.
Yeah, well, I mean, the work is a work, it's an idea, it's a thought, right? And I think the exhibition starts to become more of a thought in space, where you now have to maybe collaborate or communicate using someone else's language or someone else's site. And as you sort of choreograph or spell out a statement, right? If say, for example, if you think artworks are just words, individual words, and all these are individual words or individual letters, it winds up forming the statement of a kind of sentence. It's probably my mom, sorry. Right, and that statement becomes the Salon of Angst, bit by bit by bit, as it's spelt out with these individual characters as they're choreographed together. And I think that's how I look at influences. And when I put together a show of my own work, it's really sort of how does this go to this and this go to this. And the Stripes and Dots series, these exhibitions, really they came about as, okay, there's a show come up, I'll put my hand around this collection of ideas and we'll put that out. And that will become a statement for that chapter. That will be a kind of narrative that's there within that space. And then that show will end and those works will go elsewhere, or maybe they will recombine. And then, you know, but at the same time, and I see this as completely related, I've had this sort of ongoing idea of creating a kind of dictionary of subjects, and lichen is just this one that's now, and before that it was the bakeries and making bread, or Kippenberger, or stripes and dots, and it's a way of talking about everything, and because I believe you as an individual and everyone here has something to offer. And as you sort of grow and develop, your opinions change. And if those opinions can be reflected in the way you think about an object or a subject and how those objects and subjects look in space, then you suddenly have difference. You have a proposition. When I went into art school, it was late 90s, and the biggest anxiety that anyone said in the first week was that everything's been done. There's nothing new, and that's still used largely, and it was sort of like the highlight of postmodern anxiety. And I remember really clearly thinking...
This has something to do with fear, no?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess it's the fear of being original, the fear of having nothing to say and nothing to offer. And I remember hearing that from people I was in school with, and just thinking, well, I haven't done it. I haven't thought that thought. I haven't encountered that, and there's no way I'm like anyone else and everyone else is like me. You have to be crazy to not admit that you are an individual and you have your own thoughts.
Yes, and everything is original.
Yeah, it's figured, well, I'll try it out. It's like Hollis Frampton in the '70s saying that anything good is worth doing again, and try it out. Let's
So, before we want your questions, it won't be the last time that he is in Vienna. Is that already official, what you are going to do there? I can't talk.
People know, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Okay, and I'm very happy, of course, that has happened. Yeah. No, he will have a residency at the 21er House next year in September for 3 months. No?
Yeah, Vienna will be home for a bit.
Yeah,
I'll be back.
Then you can learn more about his very entertaining character, and about his artwork, and his art, which I really looking forward. And it won't definitely not the last time that we have something, that we work together. Questions,
if anything. Or high fives.
We can do it also very informal at the bar. Yeah, this is a great
bar is good.
Wine and some.
Yeah, bar is good.
And there's so much going on tonight, and I have plenty of advices where to go, but I'll leave it to you.
But thanks for coming out and sitting down and listening to the crazy talk. That's good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Nicolaus. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the challenge. This was difficult to do.
Yes, but it was also difficult for us.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not talking about this.
Oh.
Not only, but also, yeah, technically, yes. Thank you for our production team who really managed to find a way.
Brilliant.
This was not easy. That's true.
Yeah.
Not easy to produce and how to produce and where to produce, etc., etc.
And we're doing a silk scarf.
Oh, that will be
From
very
the Lichen
beautiful.
print. That's coming out in a couple weeks.
I will buy one for my mother, and I know that she will be very happy.
Buy one for your mom, right for Christmas.
Yes.
It's this section right here.
Yes.
That section there will be printed, and they're quite. We saw a test, and it's quite. Like it's actually something you want to wear.
Yes, it's unisex.
Yeah, very unisex.
Not only for mothers.
No.
Yeah.
It's a sexy thing.
Yes.
Huh? It's good. Sexy in Vienna.
Okay.
I think that's probably it. Huh?
Thank you.
Thanks.